Welcome to the Feminine Principle podcast, supporting women to let go of the ghosts from their past by exploring the hidden side of their female psyche with shamanic shadow work for women, with your host, Nicola Lucy. In this episode of the Feminine Principle podcast, we're tapping into our true feminine nature. And so, as women, we are all being, all seeing. And we have this extraordinary capacity of intuition and creativity. And we're also highly emotional and passionate. However, these aspects of our female psyche have been kind of stripped away from us because we have been conditioned to function, to live and relate in the external world. And the external world is outside of the self. And the feminine nature is about being present within the self, being present in this container that is our body, and so that we can function, live and relate from a whole place rather than from something separated from us. And so we have been conditioned also to fit into all of these boxes in the external world that are not our own. We've been told what we need to do, how we need to do it, what we need to say, when we need to say it. We've been told what to wear, what not to wear, what defines us. And so we've had all of this created, our identity has been created for us according to which box we need to fit in. And this stretches across both of our personal and our professional lives. So we can see that in our personal lives, we have all of these tasks that we need to do, and we have all of these labels that we need to put on our heads. Even if those labels do not necessarily align with our true nature. And so this is how we keep going. And so the suppression of women's innate nature and who we are beneath the surface has been lost to us. Doesn't mean to say that it's completely gone from us, because it's always there. It's always in the self. It's always in this beautiful womb space that is the self of woman. But through this suppression of our innate nature, we have been asked over and over and over again to perform and conform, to be according to a set of standards, to be accepted and loved and cared for. And again, this crosses both the personal and the professional realms. So, for example, we have been taught how to perform and conform in the workplace, and that we cannot be our emotional, chaotic selves in the workplace. We have to, again, put ourselves into our box and suppress our innate nature, because if we don't do that, then we will be seen as not good enough for the job, or we won't get that promotion, or we can be conditioned into thinking that we are not good enough simply because we are tapping into our nature, or we are expressing our true nature. And so as we go through this, we are, as women, wearing all of these many hats and all of these labels that define us and have created our identity. The mother, the caretaker, the housekeeper, the cook, the educator. These are all roles that automatically fall onto women's shoulders. However, because we are trying to wear all of these hats, and we are learning how to wear these hats from society, from our families, from the media, from the way in which our culture has defined us, we might not necessarily know what is the best way for us to be the mother, the caretaker, the housekeeper, the cook, the educator. And as a result, we have disconnected from our needs, and we've completely disregarded our boundaries, because we are trying to continuously do everything according to what is right or wrong in regards to societal and cultural norms. And so our needs and our boundaries have been sacrificed. And then this creates a huge challenge, a huge conflict within our female psyche. And as a result, we've become worn out, we've burnt out, and we've become so disconnected from our true feminine nature. We've become disconnected from our intuition. We've become disconnected from our creativity and from our dreams and our potential. And this disconnection has then created an impact in which our true nature comes out as anxiety and stress. And then we manifest physical symptoms such as emotional, sexual, physical symptoms that are revealing an imbalance in our bodies, hormones, and creative nature. And so this great disconnect from our female nature is actually calling for us to bring things back into balance. We need to tap into who we are beneath the surface to be able to then show up as our authentic selves. And so one of the great things about COVID is that COVID comes from nature. And so if we are nature, then COVID is nature. And so the way in which this symbiotic relationship has worked, COVID has actually made us slow down, stop rushing around, and it's forced us to change our own rhythm. Because all of the multitasks that we were expected to perform have been condensed down into a single space, which obviously has not been easy. It's been very, very challenging to change our nature from that conditioning and fitting into all of these boxes on the external to bring it back home into this condensed space because we've all been locked down. And so being with our loved ones or being with family members, for example, and separated at the same time from our loved ones and our communities has made us realize what is important. And so by changing the rhythm of our innate selves through COVID, we've had to find more of our identity. And so what's really been quite remarkable in the studies which have been showing is that, as women, they've realized that the way in which we homeschool, for example, we start to spend more time with our children and we actually see our children's educational development from a different perspective. We can see what they like and what they don't like, what they're attuned to, what they're not attuned to. And also then the rhythms in our body cycles. So instead of being in that box, again, of the 9 to 5 routine and trying to fit everything else around it, we've actually come back into more of our flow, where we've actually found that we were more productive by allowing ourselves to get up when our body clock wants to get up and wants to go to sleep when our body clock wants to go to sleep. So all of this, as COVID on the external, has helped us to slowly, and with a challenge, to start understanding what is our own rhythm. And then this nature of our relationships with the self and others through this umbrella of COVID has really put in under the microscope what is out of balance and what is in balance. And so we're starting to really find our own identity on how we do relate to the self and how we do relate to others and what is important. And so what's the solution into tapping back into our feminine nature, into what is hidden in our female psyche? Where do we start? And so it always starts with the self. So if we look at what we've all been experiencing over this past year, we can experience and understand how our identity has slowly started to break down. Our identity that has been created through being fully in this external world. And that identity breaking down is a natural part of our own evolution. So when we look at that identity, we automatically can start tapping into, okay, well, what is our identity? If we don't have who am I without this routine of going to work and being in this high-driven career, or with the children at home, so always experiencing the self, who am I without? And this introspection really does start with the self, because we cannot align our relationships with other people and with the external world until we understand what that deeper relationship is with ourself, with our true nature. And so one of the ways in which we can practice this is to learn discipline. And so discipline and also practicing discernment. These are two very powerful words. However, we have understood discipline from a very masculine point of view. And so, you can automatically think of discipline coming through from our school years, where you were disciplined and you were told that you had to do this and you had to do that. However, when we learn discipline from our own feminine nature, we learn that we need to exercise discipline in a way which honors our self-care. And self-care is really the umbrella term for our needs and our boundaries. And so when we learn to bring discipline into our day-to-day lives, to set a routine around self-care and take time out for the self, we start to learn the meaning of discipline in a very different way. And it's the same with discernment. Now more than ever, with so much information at our fingertips, it's so easy to get lost in, again, what other people think that we should do and should think and should behave and we should believe, etc., etc. So we're having all of this information overload. And so practicing discernment and really tuning into discerning what is right for us and what is wrong for us, where we want to say yes and where we want to say no. And again, this really comes back into this container of the self, is learning to listen deeply and practice discernment so that we can honor our needs and respect our boundaries. And this carving out of time for the self is to commit to that practice of self-care through what brings us pleasure and joy. And so while we have been running around like headless chickens, trying to do everything all at the same time and not having any time for ourselves, when we learn this art of discipline and creating that container for the self, even if it's just an hour a day or a couple of hours on the weekend, or however we want to fit it into our schedules and into our home life, our personal and professional lives, we are saying that this time, this 1 hour every single day is my time. It's my time to focus on what brings me pleasure and joy. And so what happens is that the more that we learn this disciplined approach from within the self and not what is expected of us, we can really start to bring in more of the things that bring us pleasure and joy, and that naturally starts to create healthy boundaries because we are also honoring our needs. And over time, this then becomes a habit. And so that time that we carve out for the self to be with the self and to be with our feminine nature and to be with everything that we are, this habit starts to form and it becomes so sacred. That time becomes so sacred to the self because we know that if we do not honor and give ourselves that time to be with the self, then we know that the anxiety, the stress, the resentment, the frustration will start to build again. And then it will throw our other relationships out of balance, and it will throw the relationship that we have with ourselves out of balance. So what we're actually doing is learning how to understand what our needs and our boundaries are through what gives us pleasure and joy. And so gradually what happens is that those two align. So we are creating and understanding what is our true nature, what resonates with our true nature, what makes us thrive, or what makes us keep on the pedal mill of surviving. And so slowly we start to find out our true nature and really be able to hone into bringing more of that balance into our day-to-day life. And that always starts with the self. And so, I always find it fascinating because when I'm working with my clients and they start to bring in and understand their needs and their boundaries by honoring their moments of pleasure and joy and creating that space for themselves, actually being able to witness how that then transforms their relationships is really quite powerful, because it's done within a space of a week. It's not something which is drawn out over a long period of time. It's kind of like they are waking up and reconnecting back with their true nature to say, hey, wait a second, this has always been within me. It's just simply been hidden from me. And now I'm starting to reveal it to myself. And that is power. That is our personal power. And we all have this potential beneath us to actually start to create a healthy and balanced life that resonates deep within the feminine soul.
Are you ready to break free from the ghosts of your past, to live with more freedom and a clear sense of purpose and inner confidence? If so, book a chat with me to explore the potent magic of one-to-one shadow walking sessions at thefeminineprinciple.com.